What's up, guys? Let's talk trial. So as you know, I've been making these videos on the George Floyd trial, and I've been watching the trial to spot certain areas where we can look at and take from it and become better trial lawyers. Basically, areas that would be good teaching points for what's going on and how it could be done better. And so one of the things that I looked at, or one of the things I saw as I'm watching the testimony, was the testimony of the Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Baker. And before I get into that, because we're going to talk about how the cross-examination could have been improved, how the cross-examination could be done in a way that's a lot more direct and efficient. But before we do that, as always, these videos are not an attempt to criticize other trial lawyers' work. This is not what this is about. The videos are about us learning from people who are trying these cases and seeing what they're doing and seeing how we can improve on what they're doing so that when we're trying cases, we can do that much better. So anyway, I'll get right down to it. The testimony of Dr. Baker, as expected, was testimony that was not great for the prosecution. We knew it wasn't going to be great. The prosecution knew it was not going to be great. I was worried that the prosecution was not going to put him on just because of the way they've been prosecuting the case. It's almost as if they're forgetting that they have all these bad things they need to deal with. But thankfully for the prosecution, from an advocacy perspective, they put him on. And so the jury's not going to think that they were hiding anything, that they tried to get the jury to not hear from Dr. Baker, because the defense was definitely going to call him anyway. But regardless, so they put him on, and Dr. Baker is the chief medical examiner for that area, and he's the person who conducted the autopsy before this whole case basically exploded. And so we knew he had some bad things to say for the prosecution, because he's basically going to testify. He basically testified that the heart condition, the drug use, and all that kind of stuff contributed to George Floyd's death. And that's something the prosecution has been playing down from the beginning. It's unclear why they've been playing down that aspect of it, as opposed to just kind of admitting that it played some factor in it, but then saying that had the police officer not done what he did, George Floyd would still be here. But that's a strategic decision they made, and really there's no need to get into all of that and whether that's a good idea or bad idea. The point being, the prosecution's been trying to avoid this issue for a while now in their prosecution. Dr. Baker, we knew was going to say that. And we also knew he was going to say a lot of other bad things. So the defense gets up there and he does a decent enough cross-examination to the extent that he gets out a lot of good points. But he gets them out in a way that's very roundabout, and it takes a while, and he's up there for like 2 hours cross-examining. And it basically, the points that he's making are diluted to a great extent by how long he takes and how long the questions are, and how not directed the examination is. So if you're going to cross-examine Dr. Baker in this case, obviously, you know, I'm not trying this case, so I'm not sitting there reading thousands of pages and figuring out what the best move is, but just kind of from an overview perspective, from a 1,000-foot view on it, you want to do a couple of things. Number one, you want to bolster him because he's going to be the best prosecution witness for you, meaning from all the people the prosecution's putting on, he's the guy that's going to give you the best testimony for your defense. So you want to bolster him. Number two, you want to diffuse some of these theories the prosecution threw out there that are just not plausible. For example, that this was a blood choke, right? Well, we know that human beings have two carotid arteries, so we have two veins, basically, or two arteries that go on each side of our neck. So if you're blood choking somebody, then you got to stop the blood flow from both sides of the neck. Otherwise, the brain's going to continue to get oxygen through one of the sides of the neck, one of the arteries. So you got to diffuse that. So you bolster him, you diffuse that. You amplify the issue with the drugs, meaning he has written in his report that the level of fentanyl in George Floyd's body was, quote unquote, a lethal level of fentanyl, meaning it generally kills people, right? So you want to bolster that. And you also want to bolster the heart condition and the fact that based on the position of the knee in the videos, it's not on his neck, and that position of the knee would not be expected to stop the breathing of somebody. So you want to those are big points that you can hit, and you can hit pretty efficiently and pretty quickly. And I'm going to go through some off-the-cuff line of cross-examination as to how I think that you could do that relatively efficiently. Basically, cross-examination where you're in and out in 10, 15 minutes and make all the points you need to make in a pretty efficient fashion. So I'm going to give it a shot off the cuff here. And obviously, if you're doing this for trial, you're not off the cuff and that you're not, going up there without any preparation. So don't take this to mean that you should be freestyling it. This is just kind of making a video for you guys to kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. So that's kind of how we do it, right? If this is the best witness for me, I'm going to start with the bolstering. I'm going to start with the stuff that makes him look good, because I want the jury to understand that this is the guy they need to listen to as opposed to all the other guys that came before, right? So I would start with something like, Dr. Baker, you're the chief medical examiner for whatever, X, Minnesota, Minneapolis, whatever it is. Yes. And you've been the chief medical examiner for 25 years now, or whatever that number is. Yes. And as a chief medical examiner, what you do is you determine cause of death. Yes. That means how people die. Yes. And you make those determinations for the state of Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota, or the state of Minneapolis, or whatever the case may be. Yes. And you do that at the request often of law enforcement. Yes. And when there is something that needs to be determined as to how somebody died, they come to you. Yes. They don't go to some pulmonologist from Scotland, right? Now, he may be, well, I don't know, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's a safe question, though, because I guarantee you in Minneapolis, this is probably the first time ever that some prosecution has gone to some guy from Scotland to tell them what the cause of death is. And if it's not the first time, it's probably happened a handful of times over the last 100 years. But anyway, they're going to go to some dude from Scotland to tell them what the cause of death was, right? Right. Now, you did the autopsy of Mr. Floyd, right? And at that time, you didn't even know who I was, right? I didn't hire you to do that autopsy. No. I didn't consult with you when you were doing that autopsy. No. You did not do that autopsy at my request. No. We've never met before. No. We've never spoken before. No. This is the first time that you and I have spoken, right? Yes. Now, at that time, when you did the autopsy, you determined that the heart condition of Mr. Floyd was a contributing cause to his death. Yes. And you determined that the level of fentanyl in his bloodstream was a lethal level of fentanyl. Yes. What that means is that that's an amount that generally kills people. Yes. And you determined he also had methamphetamine in his bloodstream. Yes. Now, tell the jury, there is no amount of methamphetamine that is a safe amount, right? Right. There's no safe dose of methamphetamine, right? Right. Now, you watch the videos in this case, right? Yes. And obviously, the videos I'm talking about are the videos where Mr. Chauvin is restraining Mr. Floyd. Yes. Now, you had the opportunity to look at where Mr. Chauvin's knee was during that encounter. Yes. And you could tell us that knee was not on his neck the majority of the time. No, it wasn't. The position of his knee also was not such that it would prevent Mr. Floyd from breathing. No. Now, there was a lot of talk earlier in the trial about blood chokes and things like that. But tell the jury, isn't it true that the position of Mr. Chauvin's knee in those videos is not cutting off the bloodstream to Mr. Floyd's neck? No, it isn't. And in fact, even if it was cutting off one side of his neck, we got two carotid arteries. Yes, that means that we have two arteries through which oxygen can get to the brain. Yes, and so even if Mr. Chauvin was cutting off one side of the neck, the other side of his neck would have still given him oxygen. Yes. So that's kind of what I mean when I say that all these points could be done in a very efficient fashion when you're up there for 5-10 minutes and you make all the points you gotta make. You make them clean. There's not a lot of back and forth. Now, obviously, the witness may try to fight you a little bit or may do this or that. Obviously, we have the benefit of the testimony the witness actually gave. So we know that these questions or questions similar to these were answered pretty straightforward with a yes or no fashion. So this wasn't a witness that was trying to fight too much. And so we have the benefit of knowing that if those questions were asked the way that I asked them, that the answers would be pretty straightforward. But even if the witness were to fight or whatever, the questions are such that the answers really cannot be disputed, right? That any of these areas of inquiry have to be responded to in the fashion that they were responded to, because the guy gave a report, and in his report, he basically admits to all of these things. So one of the things to keep in mind, obviously, from this little exercise here, this is the exercise for the video, just to give you a rundown on it. If you are to do this in trial, though, there's going to be a tone and a pace, and there's going to be a change in pitch, and there's going to be, the performance aspect of this. And so it's going to be a bit longer than what I just did. It's going to be more paced. It's going to have a different tone depending on the areas of inquiry. It's going to be a little bit more elongated. For example, the bolstering aspect, I probably will go down how many thousands of examinations he has done, and how many causes of death he has done, and how he's done all this work for the prosecution, and how when somebody dies in Minneapolis, they call him, and like he's the boss, and all this other stuff. That would probably be done in the real trial, but this is just kind of our exercise here, just to give you an idea as to how much cleaner that could be done, how you get all those points done, and you could be up and you get up, you do your cross-examination, you sit down, you probably get done in 15 minutes. And the jury will remember a lot of what you said because it's not buried in 2 hours of cross-examination. So anyway, guys, that's it for now. I'll catch you again next time. I'm going to go ahead and see what else develops during the trial. I'm going to see what other videos I'm going to put out regarding the trial. But for now, I'll take it easy, and I'll catch you again next time.